I'm assuming that our first question, the person read the book because they ask, their name's Jessica, and they ask what identifies a lifelong athlete. And for listeners, if you haven't read Dillon's book, Hope Not Nope, part of the subtitle is involves lifelong athlete. And so Jessica asked that question, and so I'd love for you to elaborate.
Absolutely. It's a great question. Thank you, Jessica, for writing that in. Briefly stated, a lifelong athlete is defined by the values that you're living out. This past weekend, I got to cover the Empire State Games, which, the trainer that was going to be there kind of backed out, and I was like, yeah, I can come and help out. And I didn't know what to expect. And when I got there, the person that was the head of it goes, yeah, the age range is 10 to 100, elite level athlete, like ranked in the world, ranked nationally, or a D1 college athlete in track and field. So that ranged down to the competitor that was like, yeah, I want to go do this. So very wide range of ages, talents, work, all wide ranges, all lifelong athletes. Mm-hmm. That 10-year-old up to the 100-year-old. I'm showing up for this event, to I do this to pay for my college, to I do this and I'm sponsored and my sponsor's paying my paycheck. But where it gets confused is that it doesn't need to be I don't want to say a competitive event, but it doesn't need to be a registered event. Because your competitive event as a lifelong athlete, if you're dealing with chronic pain, maybe getting out of bed in the morning. Your competition may be walking to the mailbox. And people, oh wow, walking to the mailbox. No, that could be a marathon for the person that's been on bed rest for 2 years. Mm-hmm. That person is a lifelong athlete. So a lifelong athlete, it's a person that's living out the values of an athlete. They're disciplined. They want to make changes for the good. They want to improve their overall well-being. They're willing to sacrifice and put other things first. And that can look in a different variety of forms of, like, I think of my dad, for example. He's a lifelong athlete. Like, when he was younger, he pulled a tractor trailer. He now drives tractor trailers. So it's kind of full circle.
Yeah.
But, he would say, well, I'm not an athlete. I haven't pulled a tractor trailer. I haven't done a lifting competition since I was in my 20s. No, you wake up every morning at 4:30, you go drive for 15 hours a day, come back home, eat dinner, go to bed, and do that 5 days a week. You are a lifelong athlete because you're disciplined, you're showing up, and you're sacrificing for other people. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what a lifelong athlete is.
I love that. I love that because it really is just simple. As you were talking, I was thinking of all these other examples, but you use the most simple example of, you don't have to be 100 years old running a marathon. However, I do want to share a story because I saw it recently of this older gentleman who, I forget all the details, I forget his name, but he was 93 years old hiking a mountain in, I think, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, and he had people around him to help him hike this mountain. And it was just this beautiful thing because he hiked all the way to the top and basically said something along the lines of, well, I thought I'd be like huffing and puffing more, and like was kind of shocked that he had already gotten to the top, even though it was this massive mountain. And I look at him, and it's amazing that he's 93 years old and he hiked this mountain, but I'm also amazed just by his perspective of, he's probably been through way harder things in his life at 93 years old than hiking that mountain. Yeah. And that's why at the top he was like, I thought I'd be more like huffing and puffing, because he probably has gone through way more challenging things, and he did this with people around him to support him, and so it was almost like easier. And so I think when we're younger, we look at athletes, we look at sporting events, whatever, and I think that some people thrive in maybe individual events or individualized sports versus like team sports. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you never do any sport, you never go about anything by yourself. You have coaches, you have other people are competing that can help you grow. Even if you're not necessarily like on a team, there's still always like people around you. And so I thought of that story. And I also thought of this other story of back home where I'm originally from in Erie, Pennsylvania. There's this gym that my brother goes to, and I absolutely love this gym. Like, they're phenomenal. Their gym was the reason why I was inspired to join a gym here in Syracuse, and I just applaud them so much. But and I don't know if I'll get all of the details to this story correctly, but there was a woman in Erie who was a couple, I don't know the number, but let's just say like 400 or 500 pounds. Like, she was severely obese where she couldn't even get off of the couch for like multiple years. And somehow she got connected with this gym. And so two of their coaches would go and help her and do like basically training in her house. And they ended up getting her to a place where she could come into the gym slowly, which was phenomenal. But I remember seeing this video of those two trainers helping this woman take a step from her basically like her lawn onto her front porch, which was a step a little bit higher than typical stairs, and so it was just like a little too challenging. And watching her basically hold on to these two like strong men in order to get up, and she struggled with it and probably tried it like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, but then she ended up getting it. And it was just such a cool moment of, you know, that is a lifelong athlete. She did not, there were times where she probably wanted to give up, or maybe she gave up in small ways, but she did not give up completely. And now she was able to take that step. So you're right, it is walking to the mailbox. It is making that big step onto your front porch. A few months later, I saw a video of her walking an entire flight of stairs at the gym. And it gives me the chills just thinking about it. And it's not like, I don't know the girl personally. I know that she's connected to the gym that my brother goes to back in Erie, PA. But just like her story inspires me so much, because, and it's not about like the weight and being lost, although that's a beautiful thing in her specific circumstance, but it's about like the values that she was pursuing and continues to pursue. I think that's what, like you said, that's what being a lifelong athlete's all about.
Yeah, and that's where it's so true, and that's where I get a little worried with the sports attrition rates that we see, because the current data shows that by the time an athlete gets to a teenage level and sports become more competitive and things like that, the sports attrition rate is 70 to 80%, meaning that 70 to 80% of the youth are no longer engaged in sport. And that's fine if they're not engaged in sport, but are they engaged in some type of activity? Are they engaged in something that they're learning discipline, that they're learning about sacrifice, that they're learning about getting these values that really defines a lifelong athlete? And that's really what it's about. It's not about sports performance. And I'll share a quick example of one of my favorite athletes of all time. Her name is Edna. She's 86 years old and stands in at, 140 pounds, but she is phenomenal. She was at the senior games. She ran the 55-meter dash, the 100-meter dash, 200-meter dash, the mile race walk, and the mile running event, so 1,600-meter run. Not only did she do all those events, she took first place in all of them because she was one of the only competitors in that age range, but she did all of those events within 4 hours of each other. So the amount of conditioning that you have to be in to be able to do it. I told her, I know 14-year-olds that can't do that. I know 16-year-olds that wouldn't be able to do that because they don't have that capacity to do that. And you just did it all at 86 years old. She got a gold medal for every event. Being a lifelong athlete is not about these material awards that you get presented. When she went to go get her gold medal, because they give you the medal after each event, they would try to put it on her neck, and she didn't allow them to. She moved her head away, would snatch the medal out of the air, stuff it in her pocket, bring it over to her bag, and then just throw it on the ground. And they were like, come on, let's put this on. And she's like, nope. Like, why was she doing that? Because Edna's leaving a legacy. She's living out the values of a lifelong athlete. The competition means nothing to her. Other than that, she gets to leave this behind for the people behind her. Of, look what I did when I was 86 years old. If you don't think you can do this, I'm your example. And she's too humble to admit that she becomes the example, but she does become the example. Yeah. So that's the sacrifice part of this. She's 86 years old. No one is saying you have to go and do this. She's decided that this is what I'm going to do to create this legacy. That can happen at 8 years old, right? We can see it in sportsmanship of this young athlete just creating a legacy already from the values that he's creating from that discipline. So where it gets confused is, as a lifelong athlete, it's not about sports performance. It's about your performance as a human being. And I'm sharing this from Ben Bergeron. His method is that if you can make the person a better person, then they will become a better athlete. And that's a lifelong athlete. Let's make people better. If we make them better, their performance will get better. They'll start stacking up these small victories. Maybe they run a race and get a medal. Maybe they don't. But as long as they're living out those values, they're a lifelong athlete.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. Thank you, Dillon. And thank you, Jessica, for that awesome question. So helpful for us to be able to answer, and hopefully helpful for the listeners to be able to hear, like, when we talk lifelong athlete, what do we mean?
Yeah.